All right, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Sourcegraph podcast. I'm here with Christopher Chedeau, creator of Excalidraw, co-creator of React Native and Docusaurus, early developer and advocate for React and Prettier, initiator of the CSS and JS movement, and last but certainly not least, engineering manager of a team of 13 at Facebook. Christopher, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here and to talk about some of my experiences.
How, Christopher, did you get into programming?
Yeah, so I think it was like when I was 6 or 7 year old, like my father came in and like he loved to tinker with hardware and he came in with like a computer and it showed me like, oh, you can use notepads and then you can show like the browser on the other side and then like, oh, if you put like a B or H1 and like put some text and you save and then you can reload and like, oh, it was magical, like now you can actually like build and start building pages. And so this is like how I really like the first like iteration, but the places where I really started was with video games. And so I was playing a video game called Warcraft 3. And so one of the thing there is like there was a map editor where you could actually build your custom maps. And usually like the custom maps are like, oh, you're placing elements across the map, but they had a very unique thing which was a trigger editor where you were able to uh, like say, for example, like, oh, when a unit enters this region, then you can put a condition saying, oh, if the unit is a monster, then you can say, oh, the unit that entered is now going to actually move to like this other region. And so you were able to like build those kind of maps, and I've built like a lot of tower defenses, and I've also like been involved in like all of the mapping community at the time.
Yeah,
And one of the really cool thing about this is that this was a way to like start programming without knowing you're programming. You're just basically like building a map.
yeah,
And once at some point I was able to like get to know this, like some people realized that actually in practice, like all of these things that you would like double click and like change on the screen would actually generate a programming language and like code, like real code. And so this was like super interesting because now I was able to like implement, like get rid of like all of the UI and like just write codes. And I was able to like actually learn through that, and like I used the same concept, but like now it was actually writing code and like there was a normal like language syntax. And this is super cool that they were able to hack the entire like editor to be able to access this underneath. So
awesome.
yeah, this is like how I started.
That's really cool. And you were saying earlier that it was like a C-like programming language, but without dynamic memory allocation, right?
Yes. Yeah. So this was like a super interesting perspective. Is in this language, the reason they did this is because you need to run this across like all of the player in the map, and so it's run on all of the client sides, and it also run on the server. And then this way, like for like compensation and this kind of thing, now everybody's running the same thing, and they're able to like figure things out. And
Yeah.
so one of the cool, the very interesting thing is like you're not able to like allocate any memory. And so now if you're like working on JavaScript, like anytime you do like var x equal like an object, you're basically allocating new memory. So
Yeah.
what you have to do is figure out in advance like all of the possible things you would like to allocate and like put them basically in global variables. And
Yeah.
then you are basically like modifying them. And so this is it introduced like a bunch of arbitrary constraints. So for example, like, oh, if you had an array of like 200 elements, if you like allocated, like you wanted to allocate something up, you couldn't, like it was going the other way, or like it would actually not let you do it. And there was also no concept of exceptions. And so all of the things that you had like would actually work, but they would never
Wow.
raise. So this was like a very interesting way to like learn without all of the like complexities of like pointer arithmetic and like a dynamic things. So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
interesting.
That's awesome. So you got into programming through modding video games, Warcraft 3. After that, you went on to school where I understand you studied computer vision and worked on neural nets before neural nets were cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so for this, I joined a school called EPITA. And so this is a French school in Paris, and that is actually dedicated to computer science. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of like colleges that are like all across, and you maybe have like geography, history, or this kind of thing. No, like this was like like all of the courses were like data structures, algorithm, like functional programming,
Yeah.
and my major was actually in computer vision and artificial intelligence. And
Nice.
so this is I actually had the choice to like go with like more like web development, but I felt like I already knew that, and if
Hmm.
I didn't know already like the things there, I could like learn them on the job. But
Yeah.
this is something I know myself, like if I don't have a teacher that's asking me to do like math equation and this kind of thing, I'm not going to do it. And so I was like, okay, this is probably like what I should be doing to like maximize my time there. And
Hmm.
so yeah, so like sorry, there were two parts for the like computer vision. One is was like all of the convolutional networks. So basically, like you look at every single pixel, and then you
Yeah.
do an algorithm, like a recursive algorithm on those pixels, and now you're able to like find like all of the edges. You're able to find like all of the areas in the image and those kind of things.
Hmm.
And so this was like one technique. And the other one that I've learned through this is neural network. And so as you mentioned, like neural network were like really big in the like 70s, 80s or something like this.
Yeah.
And then like there was like the AI winter, and like basically like people like didn't find any concrete use cases. And so one of my teachers there were actually like part of the group of scholars that actually built like all of the theory and those kind of things
The first wave back in
for
the.
the neural network. And
Got
so
it.
he was basically teaching us, which was like pretty cool. But like in practice, like there was no use cases. Was just like the theory. And then 1 or 2 years later, then like all of the deep neural network like came in, and like now everybody's using them. And so it's been super interesting to like see like, oh, the same skill, if
Yeah.
you wait like a few years, can like be like from like completely useless to like, oh, the next big thing, and like this is like changing the world. So
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's a lesson I've heard repeated quite often. Like, you never know, what part of technology you're going to work on first, but whatever you do, learn it, love it, acquire a deep understanding of it, because you never know when something might resurface as useful later on.
yeah.
Um, cool. So, what was the journey from doing your degree in computer vision and AI to joining Facebook? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that was super interesting. So one of the things I've been doing while I was at school is to write a blog and talk about like all of the things that like I was playing around with,
Hmm.
and I found it very useful because I was able to like first like put my thoughts into writing, which helped me think. And then I was able to like show it to other people, and they were able to give me like a bunch of good advice,
Yep.
and like I was able to like talk to like people like Stroud Strupp, who like wrote C++, and like because I was doing those kind of things. And so it was like super cool experience. And one of the thing that happened there is like I created like in a weekend I was learning C++ at school. And there was this new like C++
Hmm.
0x. We didn't know when it was going to be released. And they added like lambda and like constructor and like the way to do a type in front, so you can do auto and not say the type. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
but if I have all of this, then I can basically write JavaScript in C++. And so I did like macros and this kind of things, and I was able to like do something like, oh, var x equals to 10, and var y equals to x plus and a string, and it would evaluate the same way as JavaScript. And so
Wow.
in practice, it's completely useless because the perf is horrible. Like we don't have a JIT, we don't have anything. But it was like a fun experiment.
This is all
And so
via
I
like
got,
C++ macros, or
yeah, like C macros, like you define,
I
and then
see.
you're able to like rewrite things. So
Got it. Got it. Sorry,
yeah,
I interrupted you. So you built this and then you
yeah,
posted it,
yeah.
and then what happened?
And then I went I posted on Hacker News, and like somebody, and it made the front page, and somebody from Facebook, like a VP at Facebook, reached out to me, and basically saying, oh, this is super cool, like we're building like a PHP VM, like are you interested in joining? And so my first reaction was I thought it was a prank, like I thought like one of my friends was like sending me a fake email. But I looked at this person, and it was good. And one thing that I like confused me is in France, like VP vice president, there's only one. And then I looked at Facebook, and I saw like there's like 10 VPs, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And then I realized, oh, this is just a title of like someone like high up. And so this was like interesting. And so yeah, he sent
Yeah.
me this. and I was like, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to chat?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll chat." And he basically for 45 minutes, like American style, like basically told me like, "Oh, Facebook is the best thing in the world," and like we're doing those complex programs and everything. And at the end, he asked me like, "Hey, do you want to like to apply and to join?" And for me, I was like, "Yeah, of course." Like I wanted like 45 minutes ago, but thanks for the suggestion. And yeah, and so then yeah, I did like I think 3 or 4 like phone interviews, and then they flew me in to like a super nice like a hotel in Palo Alto. I did one day of interviews, and I got in. But yeah, it was
That's
like
awesome.
a bit of the American dream. Like I was like
Yeah.
one person in France. I wanted to go to the like to the state at some point. Like my eyes were actually on Google, but
Yeah.
yeah, and like it actually happened, and like yeah, it was all of my wish came true. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you got into Facebook first, I take it you didn't work on computer vision, you didn't work on PHP
yeah.
VM. What was the first thing that you worked on at Facebook?
Mm. Yeah, so at Facebook, there's an interesting thing where there's 1 month and a half when you're not allocated to any team, and you're basically working on like random like tasks or small projects. And
Yeah.
one I was looking at it, and one of them was basically a one-liner saying like, "Hey, we acquired this new company, Face.com, that is able to tell us like where sorry faces are in images. Uh,
Yeah.
can we use it for improving tagging?" And so I was like, yeah, this sounds cool. And so I basically spent all of my months and a half like doing this. And the way it worked is so when you open the photo viewer on web, and you click the tag, then you normally you have to like click on a face, and then like start typing your name and press enter and click on the face and those kind of things. And
Yep.
so what
Yep.
I
Yep.
did was basically like when you click tag, it automatically focuses you on the first like face, and automatically expand the drop down. And if we
Hmm.
have the information about like the algorithm recognizes, then we like sort the suggestion like through that.
Yeah.
And so the workflow for this, if you want to tag like photos, is like you press tag and you basically press enter, 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 and then that's it. And so
Yeah.
this was super cool because it actually improved by a significant amount the number of like people that are being tagged. And one of the super interesting thing about this is when you tag someone, they receive a notification that they're tagged. And so if you
Hmm.
look at the list of notifications that you receive, like if you're tagged on a photo, you want to see like what was the photo, like why I was tagged and everything. And so this is one of the notifications with the highest click-through rates. And
Yep.
so now that like they actually come to Facebook, now they're able to engage, they're able to do, and so like engagement actually goes up. And so this
Yeah.
was like the first time outside of newsfeed where improvement in AI. So if we improve like the finding images and everything, um, leads to direct engagement wins. And so this was
Yeah.
like a super nice project because now for all of the people working on like deep AI stuff, they were able to say, "Hey, we did like this 2 points better model or something, and oh, actually it improved like engagement by X." And so this was like a
Yeah.
really nice way to bootstrap like all of the AI work, like computer vision AI work within Facebook.
That's awesome. The people working on those AI models must have loved you because you kind of bridge the gap between their deep kind of research oriented work and this. I bet it is like a top line business goal, right? Engagement is pretty core to
Yeah,
Facebook's business model, right?
yeah. No, it was
Cool.
pretty cool.
So at this point, was React did React exist at all and anywhere in the organization, or was this before
Yeah.
it even existed internally?
Yeah, so I joined, and the interesting thing is like, so React was like super small, and like Jordan Walk had been working on React for like I think a few years, and
Hmm.
like React was like used a bit in like ads org, and used a bit to replace comments in newsfeed, was like super early. And one
Yeah.
thing I remember is like somebody told me, "Hey, there's this Jordan Walk that has some interesting ideas. You should chat." And
Yeah.
so I like, yeah, of course, like so I think I scheduled like a 30 minutes meetings with him. And the what he told me, what he asked me like once question like, what is the most difficult thing in the front end space right now. And
Okay.
so like I didn't know, like I don't know, like, and one thing he told me is like updates. And
Mm.
so if you think about it, like updates are really the most difficult thing, because if you are thinking about like the web before like the front end,
Yeah.
in PHP you basically like you just restart from scratch all the time. So like, oh,
Hmm.
somebody goes to this page, you basically like query all the database, and you figure out like what PHP and HTML, like what HTML
Yep.
should be outputted, and then you send
Yep.
it to the client. And then like, oh, when somebody does it, like you click, like they send a post request, you process the update, and then you redo the loop of like, hey, you refresh the entire thing.
Yep.
But now in the client side, now you like with jQuery and data binding, you basically had to figure out, okay, so if I change this, like you like first like you need to like do the rendering phase and like generate like the initial thing, and then if you change this is all of the place I need to update, and if you change this is all of the place, and then like there's all of these event emitter, and like there's a lot of race conditions, and
Yeah.
so this is actually super hard. And so the idea of Jordan was like, let's like this is the hardest part, updates is the hardest part, like let's remove it and
Hmm.
use the same like server-side mental model where like you're going to actually like re-render from scratch.
Hmm.
And so now you don't have to write any of the updates, you just like change the data model and like you just literally re-render.
Yeah.
And so I left this meeting around like first like, okay, he has his mind like somewhere, like I've never had like talked to someone like that has like those kind of like super deep thoughts and everything.
Yep.
And the other, my other thought was like, okay, even like I agree with you, like this is the hardest part, but like your thing is never going to be fast, like there's no way. And so I basically like shrugged it off, and but 2 weeks later I was like in a weekend I was like, I didn't know what to do. And in the past I've been like a project where like this was a way to search for like a large data set, and I basically did everything client side, and like I hand tuned like every single mutation in the DOM, and it was like super fast.
Yeah.
And I even found like at the time like the sort algorithm could be improved anyway. And
Yeah.
so okay, let's try this React thing. Like
Huh.
I don't think it's going to work, but let's try it. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
started like basically using what like version of React. There was no JSX and everything, but like I started using this,
Mm.
and like I think yeah, in like half an hour I was able to like rebuild like what I've done in like many months of like doing.
Wow.
And
That
it
must have been
was
mind
like
blowing.
not as fast, but it was in the same ballpark of like speed. So
Yeah.
it was probably like maybe 2x slower or something, but like
Yeah.
it was like reasonable. And I was
Yep.
like, oh shit. And so this is what I was like, okay, this is like there's something there. And so basically since then, I've been like the biggest React fanboy, and I've been like trying to like convert like everybody to use React. So yeah, so this is like how I've learned React.
That's awesome. At that point, how many people were working on React? Was it just Jordan, or were there other folks on the team at that point?
So this is interesting. Is like at that point there was no React team, but
Hmm.
React was like in a repo, like in the mono repo, and like
Hmm.
many people have contributing in and out
I
of the
see.
project. But yeah, there was no like real team. And so what happened there is like yeah, this was Jordan like really like pushing and convincing people, and yeah, and it started to get like at this point it started to get momentum within the company.
Yeah.
And our and the goal was to like start open sourcing React.
Got it.
And so this is where like I got like really invested around like, okay, how do we build a website, how do we do evangelization and everything.
Yeah, say more about the launch, because I think nowadays React is almost a given, and it's easy to assume that it was
Mm.
inevitable, and just it immediately clicked with everyone and gained widespread adoption. But when you first released it, what was kind of the reaction from the community, and how did you as a member of that team like work with that and turn it into something that people were comfortable adopting?
Yeah. So for this, it was super interesting because like we launched it, and then like the launch went really bad. Like it wasn't like first, okay. So it was on Hacker News and it get
Yeah,
publicity, so this was good.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like not every project is getting this kind of visibility.
yeah.
Now there was like a few things going against our way. So first at that time, like there was basically a new JavaScript library like every month or so, and like there was like a lot of churn, and like people were okay, this is one more. So that was another thing. And the last one was like around JSX. And so for this,
Mhm.
this is very interesting because the mindset at the time was like the separation of concerns. And
Mhm.
so the whole like mentality is like the JavaScript should be separated from the HTML, that should be separated from CSS. And
Mhm.
basically with React, we are like we're going to put everything together in one
Yep.
block, but instead like the separation should be at the component boundary. So
Mhm.
like one component is like the units, and it should have like its HTML and JavaScript and CSS at the same time.
Yep.
And then like the next like component, like a file is a component. And so there was like a lot of like people like okay, what's going on. And the second part is like we for React we decided to use JSX, and this meant that we basically needed a transpile like step. And
Yep.
in that world, like nobody transpiled anything. People were including a script, and Angular one, like if you include the Angular one, it actually like parses the DOM
Yep.
online, and
Yep.
then like look for like the keyword and like rewrites it and this kind of things. And so jQuery send you and jQuery, and then you put like some like documents like on load, and then you like do your thing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this was like a big step. And so the thing that we've done for like helping with this, so the first one was Pete Hunt has been like magnificent at like explaining all of these concepts. And so what he's done is like he's wrote like this thinking in React like tutorial that is
Yeah.
like 3 pages long, but like really like clicked with people.
Yeah.
And he basically also went on a world tour where he actually like went to like I think 12 conference that year, and basically explained like the virtual DOM, like the way it does diffing, explain like separation of concern and everything.
Yep.
And people every time he did it, like people were like, okay, like you're solving a real problem. Like this is not just like messing around.
Yeah.
And so this was like the early adoption. And there's two people that really helped. One was James Long, and the second one was David Nolan. That both of them made like super compelling like blog posts that were not from Facebook, and that were actually like people clicked around like okay, this is a fundamental transformation. And so
Yeah.
David Nolan was like all about functional programming and closure and everything, and he
Yeah.
was basically like, hey, this is like what we've been missing from the closure, like from the functional world. And so it really picked up steam then. So on my side, what I did was to try to build a community.
Hmm.
And so for this, one of the things that I've done is like a weekly recap of everything happening in the React world.
Hmm.
And so there's something very interesting with like people, the way they evaluate success is they basically have a heuristic in their mind around like how many times do you hear about a project,
Hmm.
and the more you hear about a project, like the more like famous or like the more important it is. And so this is like
Sure.
something that people have in their
Occupying
mind.
space in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I did was basically to hack this. And so for this, what I was doing is every person that I interacted that like was asking about React or like doing something about React, I asked them to write a blog post about it, and
Huh.
every single one of them. And so at the beginning, there was like 10 people that were using React, and every single one of them wrote a blog post. And then in my
Wow.
weekly roundup, I was actually posting about like those 10 blog posts. And the
Yeah.
very interesting thing is like if like for a normal project, if there's 10 blog posts written in a week, that means that like the project probably have like 10,000 people.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
in
Right.
this case, like there was 10 people. And so I did this,
Just all the blog posts.
yeah.
That's amazing.
And so I did this for like the first like year. And so basically
Wow.
I was able to hack the perception that like React is bigger than it actually is, and to like yeah really like grow it that way. And then at some
Yeah.
point like the reality and like the awesomeness of React caught on, and so I didn't need to do it. Like there was like enough people like writing blog posts and everything that
Yeah.
we didn't need this. And so this is interesting is like for example like right now you're doing your podcast, and so you're
Yeah.
basically like helping people like be promoted and everything. So thanks for
Yeah.
doing this and like giving me the opportunity.
Oh, of course. I mean, thanks for coming on the show. I think you know, you are like the main attraction here. So it's like people like yourself that make this show, interesting and worth watching. So I guess like React. So you did a lot of community building in that.
Yeah.
You were also one of the co-founders of React Native, or one of
Yeah.
the original team members on that. Tell me about like the backstory there. Like, how did that grow out of the React project?
Yeah, so this one was super interesting. So Jordan Walk, the same guy that created React,
Yeah.
like his vision is like React is actually like just a way to structure UIs, but
Mm,
for him it was like not dependent on the web or on JavaScript. It was like,
yeah.
oh, this is like you have a tree that represents the UI, and you're able to diff the tree and re-render it and like do it again. And so
Yep.
at that time, like Facebook, there was a big shift where like it was like the company was going mobile first and was going native. And so one of the big challenge at the time and all the way to Mark Zuckerberg was like the iteration time of native development was like way,
Mm,
way, way, way slower than the web. And so
yeah.
Facebook has always been about move fast. And so now we basically have to
Yep.
shift to like a new business. And in practice, like you cannot move fast. And so this is something that like Mark Zuckerberg wanted to solve. And so like a
Yeah.
lot of and the way Facebook works is bottom up. Is like Mark Zuckerberg said like, hey, we need to solve this. Like this is the direction. And then like he
Yep.
expects engineers to come like from all of the company with like solutions. And so one of the things that Jonan had in mind was, can we embed JavaScript in a iOS app? And so at that point, we actually like there was no API for this, and you couldn't do it. But like he found a way to cross compile something, and he was able to do it. And he wanted to like, okay, can we run React and power like native iOS views out of React instead of like divs and span? You can like power like UI label and UI views and those kind of things. And so this is like at Facebook there's hackathons, and so in the summer there's a 3 day hackathon, and we basically like Ashwin, Lin, that were on my team on the photos team, and Jordan, we hacked together for like
Yep.
3 days, working on this like using React to power like native views on iOS. And at
Yeah.
the end of the 3 days, we had a demo where we are able to like show a list view, and we had like a primitive layout system, and we were able to like have the text editor on the right and the iOS development on the left, and basically move the line like before and after. And we
That's
use
awesome.
a native like iOS like button, and we are able to like move the like button from the left to the right, and we're able to click on it, and like now the lights like actually like works,
Yeah.
and we're able to like do a demo, and changing and saving would be like almost instant. I think it was 100 milliseconds refresh, so it was barely perceptible.
Wow.
And we presented to the like hackathon group, like all of the employees that like did some cool hacks could go. And what happened is the 5 project like most interesting have an audience with Mark Zuckerberg, and so we
Wow.
went to like present this like hack to Mark Zuckerberg, and there was Shrep, the CTO of the company as well, like in this like audience,
Yeah.
and we presented this, and both of them were super excited. And what happened the next week is we basically did like a world tour of like Facebook, and we talked to all of the management chain like and all of the people like with the demo,
Amazing.
and it was like a super like fun like thing.
Yeah.
But now the thing that happened then is like, okay, so we did this demo, like there's like people liking it and everything. But now for like myself as an engineer, like I joined like Facebook like less than a year ago, and I moved like my like myself. I married my wife. I like this was like a huge like thing. We moved halfway across the world,
Yeah.
and so now it was like a soul searching moment. Like, do I want to like bet like this dream like on like a crazy idea
Yeah.
that like, and I was like at that time I was like the answer was no.
Yeah.
And so what happened is like Lin and Ashwin basically went and built like they wanted to do an iOS photo app, and they built it using like what was React iOS at the time.
Hmm.
And 3 months after, they basically came back to us and said like, hey, look, like we really want to build the iOS photo app,
Yeah.
and right now we're spending more time building this like React iOS thing than actually building the products. And so we're going to restart the product like in normal iOS,
Hmm.
so we can actually like work on it.
Yeah.
And so it was basically a time where like the project could die or the project could live, and
Wow.
I need to make a call like, do I want to like invest in? And
Yeah.
so I did a lot of soul searching, and like basically at that point I was like, okay, I think I need to do it. And so Tom Okino was the manager of Jordan at the time, and
Hmm.
Jordan and myself, like, okay, now we like basically creating a small team, and a
Yeah.
few people came in after this, and like this is how like the project started. But this was like not an easy like decision to make, and this
Yeah.
is like something a lot of people don't realize with this kind of projects. Like they are super high risk, high reward projects,
Yep.
but most of those projects actually fail. This is like startup, like most of the startup fail. And the fact that I'm like here talking to you, like all of the stars align and everything that like it could work, but this was not a given at the time. So like I could have also like went the other side. So
You took a risk and it paid off. And I think especially it was a big risk in Facebook at the time because my understanding is that they had already tried to build an initial version of the mobile application using web technologies. That was kind of like the first attempt, and
yeah,
then it wasn't like performant enough, or the user experience wasn't good. So they ended up rebuilding it in native iOS and
yeah.
Android. So there must have been like probably some amount of institutional resistance, right, to have another go at kind of like a web based or web inspired
Yeah.
technology, right?
Yeah, no, this was like a very interesting time, and like one of the things that also like I don't know if it's still true today, but like when I like joined Facebook and even at school, there was this notion of like if you're doing web, you're not a real engineer. If you're
Mm,
doing like the kernel or like network or native, like you're a real engineer.
yeah.
And so there was this like super interesting notion where like we are coming from a web background, and so we have all of this preconceived notion that like whatever we're doing is not going to be real engineering,
Mm,
and we're like script kiddies and like let's like the pro do this, and this is like very interesting.
yeah.
And the other thing which has been super interesting is there's also like a very big difference between like the iOS community and the Android community.
Mm,
And so the what's super interesting with iOS community is like Apple like plays a central role, and basically there's like this notion that like everything that Apple does is the right way, and this is the way things should go.
yeah.
And there's very like ingrained notion of this.
Hmm.
And so now if you're basically coming and like we're doing something different than what Apple guidelines and like says, like there's a lot of
Yeah.
resistance.
Yeah.
And so this is like in practice it has worked well because like Apple in practice the software that they produce and like the libraries and everything are actually really good in practice. So
Hmm.
like there's reason for this. But it's been
Yes.
like one of the very interesting thing about like trying to convince people.
Yeah.
The on the other side for Android, what was super interesting is Android, like the state of the development at the time was like very fragmented. Like there's like 20 different of Android, and everything is
Mm,
hacky, and like the quality of the framework and the infra like was not as good.
yeah.
And so basically like for Android, like people were a lot more like welcoming to the idea.
Mm,
But the challenge there was like the actual devices were like really really worse. Like for iOS, like the iPhones are actually like super powerful,
yeah.
and on Android, like there was like really bad phones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now like the challenge was like, oh, you had the JavaScript runtime on top of it and everything. So
Hmm.
it was a lot more challenging to actually like get it to work well. And so it was super interesting, like how like one place was more about like the like people mindset and everything, and the other
Yes.
was more about like the actual technological choices and difficulties that were challenges for like working on this. And one thing that we found is that in practice, like a lot of the people working on React Native have been people like coming from a web background.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, we have been hiring a lot, but like it's still like harder to hire like an iOS and Android engineers, and
Yeah.
web engineers, like in practice there's more of them. And so
Yeah.
we've been able to like bootstrap entire iPhone and entire team using React Native through like the web. And all of the team that were struggling to hire like dedicated native engineers,
Yeah.
they were able to like get funded through like web development. And so it was also like an interesting thing around like the staffing and the people working on this project.
Yeah.
So
That's a neat, I guess, developer team growth hack is using technology that
yeah.
allows people from a much wider pool to come work on the product. I'm curious. You mentioned all these challenges with getting
Mm,
started in
mm,
both iOS and Android. Partly psychological, partly
yeah.
technical. What was the first project or first major project that the React Native team targeted inside Facebook as kind of a
Yeah.
focal point?
So the first one was Instagram. They
Hmm.
had a list of like all of the photos you've liked or you favorited, and this view like was super small and like would have like been our entry point into getting Instagram. And so one of the challenge with this is like the big challenge is like the feature was not big enough to justify like the investment and like adding like a whole like JavaScript runtime and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And so like we were not able to like actually like succeed there. And in retrospect, like I think you need to start to find like something small enough,
Hmm.
but something like significant enough that they actually solves a real problem for the company. And
Yeah.
I don't think we really like judged like the right balance. And so
Yeah.
this didn't work out. The thing that actually worked out, and like the first one was ads manager. And so
Hmm.
we were building like ads, like an entire app for managing your ads on the
Hmm.
phone.
Yep.
And one of the things is like the team had a really hard time hiring native engineers to actually build this.
Hmm.
And this was a standalone app. And so this was actually like the perfect opportunity for us to actually get like a team. And most of that team, like ads, is like the most complicated like piece of JavaScript software that we have at Facebook. And so like there was a lot of really great front-end engineers, like JavaScript expert, like in the
Yeah.
ads organization,
Yeah.
and they were able to bootstrap like the ads manager product, and we were able to work with them. And so this was like the first big app that was shipped using React Native, and to
Yeah.
this day it's still like using React Native, and like it's been super successful. So
That's awesome. And how did it grow from there? I mean, these days.
so one of the biggest thing using React Native is actually marketplace. And so this is like yeah, one of the big success stories. And one of the reason why they've been able to be successful is they've been able to iterate like super quickly, and like figure out like what works, what doesn't work, and like being able to yeah, to move faster and like with pure native development.
Yeah, that's awesome. And marketplace, I think these days, it's like one of the largest online marketplaces where like goods are bought and sold anywhere. I think I've certainly
Yeah,
bought like a ton of stuff on marketplace, and I know a
nice,
bunch of
thanks.
people who have as well. So thanks
Yeah, it was
for.
announced that there's like more than 1 billion people using marketplace every month, which is like
Wow,
really insane.
that's insane.
So yeah, though this is a yeah, a good success story.
Awesome, awesome. I want to fast forward. I mean, you've done so much work that it's so hard to squeeze into an hour. But I want to get to the latest or one of the latest projects that you've worked on, which is Excalidraw. And for those who've never used Excalidraw before, just Google Excalidraw. It's one of the easiest apps to get started using. It's a tool that you can use for kind of like online, like drawing out diagrams, whiteboarding, and it's extremely collaborative, which I think is one of the big features. Our own team at Sourcegraph started using it during the pandemic, actually, and my understanding is that you created this, and there's kind of an interesting backstory behind the
Yeah.
inception.
Yeah, so at Facebook, we have a system every 6 months of like 360 feedback. So you have to ask, like, you have to write feedback for like the people you've been working with, yourself and your manager. And I'm a big procrastinator, And so for me, it's really hard to actually write this feedback. And so what I did was to decide like, okay, now if I'm not like in the mindset of writing feedback, I'm going to like do something productive. And so my idea was to write a blog post, and I used a tool called Zwibbler to draw illustrations for my blog post. And unfortunately, like Zwibbler, like they have a demo website, so it costs like $1,000, and it's actually pretty good. And I used the demo website, and unfortunately, like the demo website, was modified and didn't work for my use cases anymore. And so I was like, hmm, okay, I've always like wanted to actually like build something like Sweepler, and like let's try it. And so I spent like I think an hour or two drawing using Code Sandbox and rough JS that like shows like makes line like a bit rough. And I was able to get something like where you're able to like draw a rectangle, and I posted a GIF on Twitter saying, "Hey, I've done this. This is cool. I'm having fun," and it got like more than 100 likes, and I was like not expecting this. And so I basically kept going for the day. And the next day, people were still like commenting, "Oh my god, like this is going to be so useful," and like many things, and like getting excited about it. And so what I did was to create a GitHub repo. And so one of the cool things with Code Sandbox is you can actually create a code repo from a sandbox. And so I did
Yeah.
this, and I was able to get a GitHub repo. And one thing I knew like over time is that like writing a project is more like building a project is more fun when there's other people around, and so
Mm.
like working with you and everything. And so for this, what I did was on the GitHub repo, I created like I think 20 issues around like all of the things I wish existed. And then the great thing about this is like people started to actually like pick up those issues and started contributing to the project. And so I was basically, oh yeah, like this is so good, and like starting merging code review and this kind of things. And one thing I did was to actually give commit access to all of the people that I merged a pull request for. And so at this point, there was a bunch of people, and like once you give someone commit access, like they feel like empowered, and they're going to do more. And so
Yeah.
then, like yeah, for the next few months, like we got like a ton of people contributing, and like basically building like a fully fledged like drawing app. And so this was like a
That's
super
awesome.
cool, and like it started growing a bit, and like people were actually using it for real use cases. And so this was like the first phase of the project for like the first 3 months, and then COVID hit. And so now basically everybody was sent to their house. And one of the big question around was like for collaboration, like how do you actually like replace like the physical whiteboard and showing people like on the paper or like something. And
Yeah.
everybody was looking for like basically a whiteboard replacement. And
Yeah.
so one of the things I didn't expect is people started like asking for Excalidraw in this realm of like a whiteboard replacements. And so for me,
Yeah.
this was interesting because I was just like for me it was like a way to draw diagrams for my blog, and I didn't consider the whiteboarding use case in mind. And so one thing I started looking at is like, okay, everybody was asking me, and so I started looking at the competition and
Yeah.
like the competing products. And one thing I realized is that all of the competing like whiteboard products, they took the whiteboard part very literally. So they used the
Mm.
same like physical constraint of a physical whiteboard, and they
Yeah.
adapted to the like software. And so, for example,
Yeah.
like all of them had like a fixed dimension for the canvas, and for
Yeah.
ECHO, I was like, there's no reason for this. Like we're on the screen, like we can just like scroll and keep scrolling, and then like
Yep. Yep.
put things like wherever you want. The other part is around typing. Like a lot of them are like actually don't let you use your keyboard to actually type stuff. Instead, like you
Mm.
have to use your mouse to draw the letter like a physical whiteboard. And I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but like I'm not able to actually write things super well on my with my trackpad on my
Oh,
MacBook.
it's a terrible drawing
Yeah,
experience.
and same, like none of them really had like things from like the like digital world, like copy paste, being able to rotate stuff, being able to like make things bigger. Like they all had like this eraser, like you literally like erase the stuff. I'm like, no, like you just select stuff and you press backspace and this is how you erase stuff. And so this was super interesting, like how basically like going at it from like a purely digital like angle,
Yeah.
I was able to build something that was actually a better whiteboard replacement than just copying all of the like physical constraint like over. So it was like a very
Yeah.
interesting thing.
I feel like you're like the Linus Torvalds of online drawing apps, because in the same way that he was working on a version control system and he got frustrated, is I'm going to write the one I'm going to write my own VCS to scratch my own itch. It's kind of like you wrote your own drawing app and it became kind of, I think it's probably the most popular drawing app on the web at this point, at least. I mean, especially for this like whiteboarding use case.
I don't know. I know the stats for Excalidraw. So right now we have like 100,000 monthly active users. I
Hmm.
don't know the stats for all of the competitors, and so I wouldn't be surprised like they're actually bigger, because for example like Google has Google Draw, and like because it's part of the
Yeah.
Google Suite and everything, like a lot of people are using
Yeah.
it. So there's a lot of like, yeah, the space is moving quickly, but yeah, I'm super
Yeah.
happy that like, yeah, this side project have been helpful for like so many people during this time of crisis. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been helpful for us. Like members of our team just started using it just because it's so easy to dive in and it's so like natural and easy to use. And we're using it for a lot of kind of like project planning and collaborative like drawing and diagramming now. So
nice,
thanks
super
for
exciting.
building an amazing thing. And it's so cool that yeah, so you're a full time engineering manager at Facebook.
Yeah,
You have a team of more than a dozen,
yeah,
and you started this just on the side as a way of procrastinating
yeah.
doing perf reviews, and then it became kind of this thing, and then COVID hit, and now it's become super popular. And now I understand that there's a company being built around the core kind of open source project
Yeah.
too. Um, but you're still like a full time engineering manager at Facebook. So like, tell us how does all that work?
Yeah. So this is the thing where uh like I built Excalidraw like for me to actually like solve like the problem I had. And at this point this
Yeah,
problem for me is solved. And so
yeah,
this is not where I see like the next like 5 years of my career. And on like Facebook, like the problem I'm trying to solve is like all of the performance and reliability and like size of like the Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, Ads Manager, like all of
yeah,
those. Like this is right now what I want to solve, and this is where I want to dedicate most of my time. But there's
yep,
this thing happening, and so like I want to be a good steward. And so one of the things that I've like learned as a manager is like now I'm basically managing this project. And so what I'm doing is I'm not coding anymore, but I'm like having like putting the right people in the right connections, like being more strategic around like,
yeah,
oh, what could be helpful and these kind of things. And so the good thing is like there's two people, David and Milosh. So David was the
hmm,
biggest contributor of Excalidraw. I think he like surpassed me now, and
hmm,
and Milosh is like his partner in crime, and both of them like basically decided to like focus and build a company around it. And so this is one of
that's
the
awesome.
things which has been interesting with this experience with Excalidraw is, so this is an open source project, and this is like we did like end-to-end encryption, so that like no data is going through the server and everything. But
Yep,
a lot of the company, and like rightly so, are like afraid of using it for their core business if there's no one behind it, like not a
yes,
legal entity behind it and those kind of things. And so one of the things that we realize is that, oh, actually, like if we build a legal entity around it, now we're going to be able to like provide like the peace of mind for all of the companies and provide like proper support and everything. And
yeah,
so this means that like we can actually like have more people use Excalidraw by having a company and by building like a lot of things that are company specific. So for example, like authentication, like user management, like permission and those kind of things, which is like
yeah,
right now in the open source, like doesn't exist. And so this has been something like all of the companies like want, and for good reasons. And so now this is, I think, a win-win model where we have like people dedicated to build like the business specific use cases. And then of course like this requires investment, so like they have to pay like right now it's $7 a month per seats to do it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now it's like, and so like Milosh and David are able to like make a living out of this. And
Yeah.
like they are also able to like also maintain the open source application, because now like
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend like more time like writing code. And open source like is all like great, but at some point like there needs to be some people are spending time and like their time and career and effort on this. And so this is good
Yeah.
to have like the legal structure to be able to support open source.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the project is it can sustain itself now
Yeah.
that it has this kind of source of funding attached to it in the form of a business. Um, I feel like you of all the people I've chatted with are probably one of the best at kind of time management and delegation. And uh, this is like one example of that I think unique skill that you have. I also recently read one of the posts on your blog, which you mentioned earlier, called "Casting Lines,"
Yeah.
and all about how to find people to work on problems that you think need solving
Yeah.
and convince them to kind of like internalize the motivation and become passionate about the problem the same way you are. Like, what other like general approaches do you find useful in kind of scaling the influence that you have on the world and convincing other people to
Yeah.
get involved in projects you think are worth getting involved in?
Yeah, so this is very interesting because like for me, like what matters most is like we're actually solving the problem. And
Mm,
so when I joined Facebook, I was basically the one that like every time I touched something that, like I wanted to fix, I would actually go in and like own things. And one thing I quickly realized, and like the hard way, is that at some point, like if I'm going in this mindset of like I own everything, at some point I'm basically going to be in the mode where like I'm basically like like bite on too much, and I cannot
yeah,
like actually like spend like an afternoon without something I need to handle, or, like, and I cannot actually like push the project. And so one
yeah,
thing I've done with my manager like recommendation is stop, like just like say you're not going to like touch this anymore, like and so I did this when I moved to React Native, like all of the photos things I basically like say
yeah,
I'm not here anymore, you do whatever you want with it. And
yeah,
what was super interesting with this is like I was naive and I saw that like, hey, it's going to like die, and like it's going to explode, and like the world is going to end. And one
yeah,
of the things in practice is like Facebook is built in a way that like is very resilient. Whereas like if there's a problem and like the problem is big enough, then
yeah,
like it's going to get stuffed. And
mm,
it's with the mono repo and the culture of like peer reviews and everything, like
yeah,
we have like a very little like burst factor where like, oh, if somebody leaves, like we're going to be like super screwed. And
yeah,
so this what happened is like, oh, I left, and then I saw like the project, like many of them like stopped anything, but like the like it stopped developing, and some of them actually like somebody fresh came in and
yeah,
built a lot of things that like didn't imagine like would be possible, and like made it like way better than like I could have imagined. So this was one case with CSS layouts, so the layout engine in JavaScript, where like I built it like with JavaScript and like compiled it to C and everything, and but for like the React Native use case. And so Emil Slogender was working on native on iOS and Android, and he was basically like rebuilt it in C++ and took ownership. And now we
yeah,
actually like on the native iOS and native Android, and even in Unity, like they're starting to use Yoga, which is called now. And this is like now it was like I would have never been able to do that. And so
yeah,
now the interesting thing about this is like now what I've been trying to do is to figure out like how I can like get the ideas and give the ideas to people, and
hmm,
basically grow the people in those projects. And
yeah,
now they can like get all of the fame, all of the credit, like all of those things. And
yeah,
I'm able to like, yeah, get more things going on. And so now I like a different role where like I'm basically like a startup advisor, if you want. Where like I basically work with a bunch of people, and I
Yeah.
have a bunch of connection, and I'm like putting them together, and like I'm like making the project successful, and not by actually writing code and like being engaged, but like by figuring out like where should it go, and based on my experience, like, oh, if I see it going some other way, then like, okay, I'm going to like come in, start nudging it back, and then
Yeah.
go there. And so this is why like now I'm like able to like do the part-time job of like Excalidraw, because
Yeah.
like there's David and Milosh that are like running the show day to day and making it grow. And like, and now I'm like my team, I'm doing the same, where like I'm able to get like the my manager and like my engineers, like all of those things that like some of them, like some of the ideas I have, being able to like get them. And of course, like the thing for me is more about direction. And this
Mm.
is what I was coming with the like Zuckerberg example, is like he said like mobile, like this is mobile first. And so now I'm doing like, okay, now we need to solve like perf and reliability. And
Yeah.
I have some ideas, but like they are super smart people at Facebook reporting to me, like, and so I'm basically like, yeah, pitch me your ideas, like what project, and then okay, like let's make it happen. And then I can give like some suggestion around like, oh, I think this way is going to be better or something. And so now we
Yeah.
can get like more people like be having impact together.
That's awesome. I feel like that's what a manager should be. That's like an ideal state, and I feel like you've figured out how to do it, but to like the next level. And it's such an inspiration because I think it's good on so many different levels. It's good because you get your problems that you care about solved.
Yeah.
It's good for the people who actually get to solve them because they're motivated to solve them. They've kind of internalized the reason why they want to solve that, and it becomes this project that they can use to develop their own kind of professional skill set and careers. And it just seems like such a virtuous cycle. And it's a model I think I definitely want to learn from and copy more as we grow the company here at Sourcegraph as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Christopher, I think we're coming up on the end of the hour here. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat. As kind of like a last thought, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? Any like parting thought, or maybe like a call to action to try out Excalidraw, or check out your blog, and anything like that that you want to leave as kind of the last word?
Yeah. So I think my last word would be like, yeah, have crazy ideas, and like don't be afraid of like dreaming big. And this is one of the things I feel like in this industry right now. One of the challenges, like it's really easy to be caught up in like you're going to like fix like some small part of it. And one
Yeah.
thing I'm seeing a lot happen is like you basically like work on some projects, and then like 2 years later, like somebody else is going to come with like basically rewriting it,
Yep.
and then like rewriting it. And for me, like
Yep.
this is so depressing, because like now we got like super smart people that are like solving a problem, and then like, oh,
Yeah.
the new generation is going to come and like basically resolve the same thing. And this
Mm.
is just a waste of time for me. And so for
Yeah.
me, what the thing I'm trying to do is every single project is I want to make sure like I find like the like perfect solution. And so this is my goal. Like I'm aiming for the perfect solution. In practice, it's not perfect, but like I'm really
Yeah.
trying to solve it once and for all. And so now I can move on to the next project. And so I feel like having this kind of mentality where you come in and hey, this is going to be like the best possible implementation of like drawing like app, and let's actually make it happen. And
Yeah.
then okay, now I can like say, yep, I like this is working, this is done. And
Yep.
like now we can like start scaling it and everything, but like not like there's not going to be somebody like in 2 years going to like start rewriting everything and say oh, there's probably going to be, but like I'm trying to not make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like React, right? Like
Yeah,
before React, there was a new JavaScript framework
yeah,
every 6 months, and that became kind of like the hot new thing. But React has been so good that
yeah,
it's lasted this long and become something of a standard, de
yeah.
facto standard in the front end community.
And this is something like if you look at projects I've been working on, like React, React Native, like Prettier, like CSS in JS, or
Yeah,
CSS in JS is like more like a different topic, and Excalidraw. So yeah, this is something I've been like, yeah, trying to like, yeah, build it once and make it work. and so it didn't always work, but like when it worked, like yep, it was solid. So anyway,
Yeah.
this is my parting thoughts for all of the people listening.
That's great advice, and thanks so much for taking the time to share them, Christopher. It's been a true pleasure. Thanks for being on the show, and I feel like there's so much that we didn't cover. We might have to ask you back at some point as well, if you're up for it.
Yeah, you know where to find me. Thanks for like hosting this, and yeah, hearing me rant about a bunch of things. So
It was the pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
bye.